What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Didn't Ask podcast, episode 39. We're getting to the big 4 and 0. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been going fast. How are you doing? I hope you had a good week in the past week. I hope you have been busy, been doing lots of things, been watching lots of things. I've been watching some things. I've been watching Formula One. And man, what a crazy race it was last weekend. The first time racing in Saudi Arabia, for the first time on this track as well, for the Formula One. And man, before going into this race, they've said many things about the track. They were like, man, this is going to be the fastest street track we have had in the season ever. It's going to be faster than Monza. It's going to be crazy. And when we saw the layout of the track, people were concerned because it's basically a tunnel from beginning to end. There is very little room for error, and man, there were some errors, resulting in yellow flags, safety cars, virtual safety cars, red flags, you name them. All the flags were fucking waving constantly throughout this race, and sadly, Max didn't win. And we needed that win going into the final race of Abu Dhabi to secure the championship. But right now, Max and Lewis Hamilton are both on 369.5 points, which means that the final race in Abu Dhabi this weekend is gonna be absolutely outrageous. So, theoretically speaking, and these things have been thrown out, Max could drive his car straight into Lewis Hamilton and be crowned champion, realistically speaking. But that's not how Max wants to win. Max is an aggressive driver though, but this is the sport, man. And for the most part, it has been safe this year. There have been some things here and there, but I feel like it's been Lewis and Max butting heads constantly, and that is what brings them into dangerous situations. I wouldn't necessarily blame either one of them, though the FIA seems to be blaming Max a whole bunch. So yeah, but this weekend is going to be absolutely outrageous. We're going to see how well the Mercedes motor is holding up, because it got, of course, changed, and then Lewis started performing incredibly well. So we're going to see if that motor still holds tight, and if maybe he's gonna even do some more changes to the engine, and you know what I'm saying, it's gonna be a very interesting one. But again, this is not a Formula One podcast. This is a Reddit podcast where I dive into the world of Reddit to see what the people asked Reddit and didn't ask me. If this is your first time, that means I will go to the Ask Reddit subreddit and I will pick 5 questions from there, and then to finish it all off, I will go to the Am I the Asshole subreddit to see if the person that's asking the question is the asshole, yes or no. Well, that is enough for the introductions for today. Let's jump into the first question for now, coming from user Big Plunk, and they ask, what is your job and how much do you get paid? Jobs is a very hard thing for me, realistically speaking. So when I came out of college, I was looking for a job, but you get into that fucking weird gray area where it's like, I have my diploma, but I don't really have that much experience, especially for me, because there are a lot of people that go into college knowing precisely what they want to do. For me, that was kind of the case, and I still think that I want to go that way, but on my path, I have gone some different directions. So in college, I did internships at completely different companies. The first internship was as basically like a gaming journalist / entertainment journalist. So I would do reviews for movies and write news about games and movies and tech and all that type of stuff. It was really fun to do, and it is realistically the way I would like to go. But my second internship, I actually wrote for a TV show, and I think the English translation of the show would be Doctor Doctor, and it's like an comedy sketch show where I would write jokes and translate jokes, like old-timey jokes, to be fittable for that TV show in that format. And I had an amazing time doing that. So I'm very glad that I did it. But with that, it just diverges your working experience. So when I graduated, I was basically, like I said, in a gray area. I didn't really have that big of an expertise, especially because the study I did wasn't that specific. I studied media in a very broad sense. So it wasn't very specific to a certain thing, because like you can go to school and study to be an accountant, and then it's very easy to be like, oh, I studied accountancy, so I'm gonna be an accountant, or I studied law, so I'm gonna be a lawyer, type things. But with studying media, it's still very broad and open, and you can go into the journalistic side, but you can also go into more a communication side, or work in TV production, or like I said, writing a TV show, for example. So I went and looked for another internship to be like, hey, I'm gonna work on my experience a little bit, because nobody's really offering me any jobs, and I don't really want to work in a supermarket. No offense to the people that do that, but I was just like, well, I did graduate from college and I do have my bachelor's. So I'm not gonna go to a supermarket, because that's just basically above my pay. Like, that's below my pay, I should say. It's like, I'm not gonna do that. No offense again to the people that work there, because you're doing great jobs, but I'm not gonna be sitting there between fucking 15-year-olds that get their first job in high school. So went looking for a internship, and I got an internship, or like I got a meeting for an internship at a PR firm in Amsterdam, and we were talking a bit like the specifics. And because I wasn't doing anything, because I came from college and was really doing nothing for about 6 months, basically, I guess. No, it was a little less than that, but it was getting close. Because that's we're gonna go a little bit back. So I came out of college, didn't have that much work experience, so I was looking for jobs, applying for jobs, not getting jobs. Then I got called early last year, early 2020, and it was the production company that produces the sketch comedy show, and they were just like, "Hey, Djimon, do you want to come back and write a second season?" And I was like, "Yes, of course. I love working there. It was a great time." So I went back for 2 months, got some money, of course, that's great. Got some money, worked on a second season. Don't think that ever aired, because the jokes weren't that great. And then I was out of a job again. So again, went applying, again, nothing. And then, like I said, I was looking for an internship because I wanted to get some more working experience. Applied at a PR firm in Amsterdam, and I was supposed to like come in at the end of the summer, so like August, September type, but they just had another intern hired, so they were just like, well, the intern is still here, so we don't really know what you have to do or what you can do. So we're gonna scooch your starting date a little bit back. And they kept pushing that date back. So from September it went to October, and then but November, and then it became fucking December. And at that point she was just like, yeah, it's gonna just take very long, and maybe even you're gonna maybe even start next year. So that would be the start of 2021. And then they were like, well, I do know somebody that also has a PR firm that might actually fit your interest way better than we can. So with that, I came in contact with the PR firm, Het PR-bureau, in Amsterdam as well. And they are a pretty big PR firm, and that deals with very big companies. So I worked there as an intern for about 4.5 months, I think. And then it was my end of the internship, and then I flew, and I started applying again and again, not getting anything. And then they called me up again, and they were like, "Hey, we are looking for a freelance PR advisor. Do you have any interest?" And they said like, "Oh, we're gonna be working on this account and this customer, like, or this client, I should say." And I was like, well, those are very cool clients and I would love to do that. And that's how I got my job now. So right now I am going back to the question asked by Big Plunk. What is your job and how much do you get paid? Right now I am a freelance PR advisor and I get paid 35 euros an hour, which is pretty nice. It's been pretty cool to make so much money. Sadly, I should say the hours aren't very consistent. So one day I might work 3 hours a day, and the other day I might be working nothing really. So at the end of the week, I always try and see if I can get around 10 hours out of that. Because at that point, then it's kind of worth it. Because otherwise, it's not really worth it. But right now, I'm making a pretty good wage. Sadly, that is before taxes, so I'm still waiting to do my full taxes of the year, and then I'm probably gonna have to fucking send most of the money that I made to the fucking government. But yeah, so very simple question after a very long story. For the question asked by Big Plunk, what is your job and how much do you get paid? Right now, I am a PR advisor and I get paid 35 euros an hour, which is pretty nice. Thank you for your question, Big Plunk. Moving on to the second question of today, asked by user Ine. And they ask, what celebrity would you marry if they asked to without any date prior? I have, of course, thought about this. Who hasn't thought about marrying a celebrity that you see on TV constantly, that you're very attracted to and you hear stories about, and then you think like, oh man, that person is very interesting. And for me, that celebrity would be Taylor Swift. First off, like, I'm in love with Taylor Swift. I love her music and I love the stories that she's told and that she's in. Like, I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, and all my friends know that. At first, it was a bit of a weird thing because as a light skinned, like black kid, it was very weird for me to be super hyped about a white girl singing, especially coming from the family that I came from. Like my dad and my mom both really big fans of hip hop and R&B, and my mom is white, which is crazy sometimes to think. But she loves R&B music, she loves to dance, and with that it became super weird to be like, hey, like it's of course not comparable, but in some ways it kind of felt like coming out of the closet. What I imagine coming out of the closet feels like, where it's just like they look at you weird. And in some cases, I think it might even be better for me to be like, hey, I'm gay. I think my parents would be more acceptant of that than for me to be singing along with Taylor Swift at some points in my life. But they're totally fine with it. My dad teased me a little bit at the beginning, but we got over it at the end. But yeah, that Taylor Swift would be one of the people that if she would ask me to marry, I would be like, yes, let's do this right now. I get it over with. I will sign the prenup. I don't need any of the money. I just want to be with you right now. That's just it. That's just the end of it. The second celebrity, and again, my friends know this with a million miles, is Charlotte Flair or Ashley Flair or whatever you want to call her. Charlotte Flair is my favorite professional wrestler ever. Like, I love Charlotte Flair. I have a Charlotte Flair t-shirt that I'm actually wearing right now, which you can't see because there is no video aspect to this, even though we do have a YouTube page, so please subscribe to that. So yeah, I am a big fan of Charlotte Flair. I know the stories about her that she can be a little bit of a bitch, and she sadly just called off, according to rumors, called off her engagement with Andrade El Idolo, which they seemed very good together. They seemed very nice and they seemed to have like a genuine click. But sadly, that didn't happen. But hey, where one door closes, another opens. So, Charlotte, if you hear this, hit me up. You know what I'm saying? Hit me up. I would love to go on a date with you. Yeah, so those two celebrities. Going back to the question asked by user Ine. What celebrity would you marry if they asked to without any date prior? One, of course, Taylor Swift. Even though she has like a long list of dating past, I don't care. Add me to the list. I'll be part of that party. And then to Charlotte Flair, and even though that she has a very bad history with engagements and weddings, again, add me to the list. I'm willing to find out by myself. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that would be it. Thank you for your question, Ine. Moving on to the third question of today. This one coming from user Pokeboy626, and they ask, which celebrity voices are instantly recognizable? As a gamer, you are very much trained to recognize voices very quickly because it's just one of those things where the character in a game may look different, but the voice, of course, is the same. And with that, I can recognize the voice of the Rogue Four, as they would call them in the industry, and that's Laura Bailey, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, and Travis Willingham. Those four actors, I can recognize their voices from fucking across the room. I can just hear a trailer for a game and be like, yo, that's Travis, that's Troy, that's Ashley, that's Laura. Those four voices are so ingrained in my head that it doesn't matter what game they're in or what TV show they're in, I will recognize it. And the funny thing is that I know them from voice acting, and even though they have done some quote unquote actual acting or like face acting, so as some people would say, in the past, it was very weird for me to watch the show Blind Spot, where Ashley Johnson plays Patterson. I think her name is William Patterson. Spoilers. But yeah, she was basically in every episode, and that was so weird for me to see like the actual face that belongs to the voice of Ellie from The Last of Us, among other things. So that was really, really funny to me. So going back to the question asked by Pokeboy626, which celebrity voices are instantly recognizable? And for me, that would be the voices of Troy Baker, Laura Bailey, Ashley Johnson, and Travis Willingham. Those four actors are in so many things, from games to animes to cartoons to you name it. They are in all the things. And if I hear their voices in a trailer, I am pretty sure that I can pick them out in the trailers. So thank you for your question, Pokeboy626. Going on to the fourth question of today, asked by user terabyte underscore underscore, and they ask, what food in someone's cabinet screams, I am a bad cook? I am not a fucking great cook. I'm gonna be very honest with you. Like, I am very much the type of person that basically heats food. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know what things I can combine to make it better and taste nicer and whatnot. But like, I'm not gonna be the greatest chef out there on the planet Earth. But if somebody has like pancake mix in their cabinet, I'm gonna be a little annoyed. And I get it. It's super easy. You fucking add water, maybe an egg, and you're fine, and you can get your pancakes. But making pancakes is pretty fucking easy. And those mix boxes basically are nothing different than just flour and maybe a little baking powder in there. Like, it is very simple to just get flour, get baking powder, and then mixing those two together, and then add an egg and water or milk, and then you have pancake batter. Like, it's super easy. So again, I get that it is easier to buy the box and add water and, like I said, make it that way, but honestly, it's a bit dodgy if you do that. It's a bit sad if you do that. So, going back to the question asked by user terabyte underscore underscore, what food in someone's cabin screams, I'm a bad cook? And to me, it would be boxes of pancake batter mix. Because it's just, pancake batter is so easy to make. And I made it actually last Saturday, like this weekend. I made it, or like Friday. It was Friday. I made it, and it took me, I think, half an hour to get the batter and make pancakes. It's very simple. It's super quick, and in my opinion, they taste better because I can add more sugar very easily, and so they are very nice. So yeah, thank you for your question, Terabyte. And now, moving on to the final question for the Ask Reddit for today, asked by user Love Simple Hacks, and ask, who is the most famous person in your family? For me, it's a pretty easy question. Well, my family is very quote unquote famous. My family is very well known, I should say, in Amsterdam and the surrounding regions, because my family is pretty big. So there is basically always someone that knows someone. So if I say my name, then people go like, "Oh, you're that person's cousin, or you're this person's son." It's very simple. Like my dad gets recognized. My dad was a professional fighter, which also helps, especially in that industry, in the fighting industry. Like I went to fighting shows and like galas and whatever, where I would be sitting at the table with UFC guys. Like it's fucking crazy because they just know my dad because my dad has been around for so many years. And for me as a UFC fan, it was absolutely fucking crazy to sit at a table with the Stefan Struve who just walked past, and actually that's even funnier. So a couple of years ago, my dad and I went to this boxing event, and again, it was like a boxing slash MMA event. So they would do one round of boxing, and then they would do kickboxing, and then they would MMA, and then they do Muay Thai, and then they would go boxing. It was a whole mishmash of martial arts, and it was really fun. But because there were MMA fights, lots of MMA gyms went, and lots of these UFC guys and Bellator guys, they just train at these gyms, so they would corner younger fighters or less experienced fighters. And my dad and I parked the car, so we walked up to the venue, and Stefan Struve was outside. And for you that know MMA, you know Stefan Struve. He's the skyscraper in UFC, heavyweight fighter, really big guy. And my dad just walked up to him, and this was like a couple of weeks after his fight. I don't remember what fight it was from the top of my head, but he had just won a UFC fight. And my dad just walked up to him and congratulated him, and he was like, "Hey, Andre, you're here, cool." And then he was like, "Thanks, man." And I was just fucking confused. Like I was just like, "Yo, that's Stefan Struve. I watched him on TV a couple of weeks ago." And my dad just walked up to him, congratulated him with the fight, and they recognized each other, and it was fucking weird. And then we sat at our table because we had our private VIP table because, again, my dad knows people. And then Gegard Mousasi came up to the table and sat there, and I was just like, what the fuck is Gegard Mousasi doing here? Again, at the time, Gegard Mousasi was fighting for the UFC, now fighting in Bellator. But it was fucking awesome to just sit there and have all these great fighters just walk up to the table and say hi to my dad. So yeah, in specific areas, my dad would be very famous. But the easiest answer to this question would be my cousin. He is a football player, soccer for you Americans out there. My cousin Kenny, he plays for Fulham right now, Fulham FC, and he has gone from Amsterdam to Lyon to London right now, and he's not been playing that much, but the times he has been playing, he's been pretty good. So yeah, that would probably be the most famous person because yeah, he actually is a pretty famous player. So I would say my cousin Kenny, which sounds like a movie. To you, love simple hacks. Who is the most famous person in your family? And I would say my cousin Kenny, even though my dad is pretty well known in the region. I can say. But my cousin is, well known over the whole world, and he's in FIFA. So my dad isn't. So makes it a lot easier. That's also like one of the funny things because like I have basically nothing with football other than that my cousin does it. But I do watch some FIFA streams on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's really funny when they do pack openings and they pack my cousin. And I lose my shit while they go like, oh my god, I got Messi or Ronaldo. And I'm just like, hey, that's my cousin. He's there in the pack. So yeah, that would be the answer to you, Love Simple Hacks. Thank you for your question. And now, moving on to the final inquiry of today, coming from the MIDSL subreddit, asked by user no underscore yogurt closet 9610. And they ask, am I the asshole for borrowing some money from my wife's saving account? This is, yeah, okay. My wife and I have joint finances, but she has a savings account her grandpa set up for her before he passed. It's around 40k in savings. We both work IT jobs and I get paid fairly well. I want to note that we do not live in America, so wages differ. She has stated to me that that money is for either an emergency or in case we plan on buying our own house. She said that in case I need money for an emergency, I'm allowed to use. I also have access to the account, but so far I didn't use anything. 2 months ago, my sister asked me to lend her 5k because she wanted to pay for her wedding dress, but her card had expired and kept declining. I lent her 5k, but since I didn't have the full amount of my own paycheck, I borrowed money from my wife's savings. My sister said she'd pay me back once her new card was ready, which would take less than 2 days. I didn't tell my wife this because I'd replaced the money in 2 days. It's been 2 months now and my sister is putting off on giving back the money she borrowed. She keeps finding excuses on why she couldn't give it back every time. My wife hasn't checked the savings account in ages, but what if she happens to check it and she figures out 5k is missing? My best friend says I should be honest with her and I should accept the consequences of my own actions for not notifying my wife and not letting her know about the money missing. Am I the asshole? I feel very guilty for this and for trusting my sister. Well, I think you answered your question with that final sentence there. You feel very guilty. Yeah, because you're the asshole. Of course you're gonna feel guilty because you basically stole 5k from your wife without her knowledge. Like the fact is that you touched the money that was meant for buying a house or for an emergency. Paying for your sister's wedding dress is not an emergency, at least not on your side. So, for example, what would happen if you, God forbid, get in a car accident and you need to buy a new car? You gotta get to that money and then use that to buy a new car. Paying for your sister's wedding dress is not worth the money. And with that, it's like you also, like, even though it's your wife and you have joint savings, the money that was in that account had a very specific destination. And to be all honest, even though you have joint finances, this is, in my opinion, still your wife's account. So it is even more frustrating in that sense that you gave away money that doesn't even necessarily belong to you to your sister with the knowledge that, oh, I'm going to pay her back. But like, she didn't. And the fact is, you gave away money that wasn't yours and that you yourself didn't have. And that is what bugs me the most. Where it's just like, yeah, you spend money that isn't yours and now you have to deal with the consequences because you haven't gotten the money after 2 months. So at some point, you have to gonna pay that money back. And you've had 2 months to do so. So at some point, maybe, and of course you probably don't want to hear this, but maybe you should have just paid it back already. Because you have a job. So for you, it would be the easiest way to just pay off the 5k, just put that back in that account, and then be like to your wife, like, hey, 2 months ago, my sister needed money. for a wedding dress. I didn't have that money at the time, so I borrowed it from the savings account. I have already paid it back, even though my sister hasn't paid me back yet. But the savings account is fine. There is 40k already on there, so it's all good. I think that is right now your only option because you've been waiting for 2 months on your sister, and maybe you need to start, involving your parents with this because 2 months for 5k it's a long time, and I understand that it's a lot of money, but it seems like your sister scammed you for 5k, and that is a lot. So going back to your question, no underscore yogurt closet 9610. Am I the asshole for borrowing some money from my wife's saving account? Yes. You borrowed money that you have yet to pay back in 2 months. And I know that this is the thing that you are struggling with because it's your sister and she was supposed to pay you back, yada yada yada. But you didn't have the money to pay your sister. So that's one thing you could have said, to be like, hey, I don't have the money, so no, I cannot lend you money. Or two, you could have paid back the money to the account yourself already, or at least parts of it, to be like, hey, I did use the money, but I have all intention of bringing that money back. But in the whole of the story, it's just like, you spent money that wasn't yours, and now you have to deal with the consequences of that. And yes, you are the asshole for doing that. Thank you for your question anyways, no yogurt. And that was it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week, episode 39. I hope you had a good time, and if you did, please leave a rating on Apple Podcast and all the other podcast services where you can find this show and where you can rate this show, because that would help me out tremendously. You can find this podcast on anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. You can find all the links to all the favorite podcast services there as well. But on anchor.fm, you can find a button that says messages, and you can press that to record a personal message for me with you asking your personal question. I can then use that audio to slice into the podcast and let you tell your own story while me answering to it. If you don't want your voice to be heard on the podcast, I completely understand. Please say that up front on the message, then I'll just read out a summary of your question, and then I still answer your question because that's why you're here, right? Well, that was it for me for this week. I will be back next week, and in the meantime, if you want to know what I'm watching, you can go to trek.tv. That link will be in the show description, like all the other links. You can also find this show on YouTube if you want to see this on the big screen, even though it doesn't really have a video component, but you will find that out. Just search for the Didn't Ask podcast on YouTube and it should pop up very quickly. Well, I hope to see you back next week. Until then, have a good week, stay healthy, and I'll see you back next time. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.